Hey, besties, I'm Victoria, and welcome to the Book Besteas Podcast, where the books are good, the takes are honest, and the tea is always hot. Today, we're chatting The Mistake, book two of the off campus series by Elle Kennedy. We're also going to chat a little bit about the adaptation, which I'm excited to chat about because I actually really enjoyed the show. But I'll leave that toward the end of the episode and I'll let you know just in case you don't want any spoilers. Let's try not to make any mistakes. All right. So going into this, I was quite nervous, guys, because I fell in love with Garrett and Hannah, and I was not sure if I'd be okay with a new MMC and FMC for this series. But those concerns were not founded because I absolutely adore Logan and Grace. They're such a cute couple. They have such a unique meeting story, the way that they built their relationship. I just love it, and I cannot wait to dive more into their journey. Also, this book actually had a lot more other characters and relationships than I thought, and I quite enjoyed that as well. There's going to be a lot more to discuss about that too. All right, let's dive into talking about Logan first. In book one, my expectations of Logan was that he was actually pretty similar to Garrett in terms of not just hobbies, but also personality. They're both, they both love, to get with the girls, obviously. They're hot guys. But aside from that, they are both quite introspective. What I didn't expect was just how much more introspective I think Logan is compared to Garrett, and how much personal stuff he's really dealing with, and how closed off he is about sharing that with his close circle. And so it was great to peel away the layers of the Logan onion. So, Grace. I really liked Grace right off the bat. She's actually really, really adorable to me. I love the babbling. I find it truly endearing. I think that she's such a straightforward person. She's super sweet too. Some of the cutest moments for her is when she realized that life is going to be much more exciting because a hockey player is literally showing up at her door to excite her sexually. And the way she just thinks about stuff to herself and just gets so hyped up and excited for herself, I think it's so cute. Also, when she tells herself that I'm no longer freshman Grace, I am sophomore Grace. This is a whole new me with a whole new perspective on friendships, on romance. And I just love that about her. She can really see herself as almost like a second person sometimes, and then when she does confide in people, then she just like goes off and off and is like, well, actually, about this, and then about this, and about this. And it's just really cute. Okay, so their relationship, I feel like they're just such opposites in that regard because she'll just say everything on her mind, whereas he's so closed off. But and let's start off first though with them meeting because Elle Kennedy, kudos and shout out to her for coming up with a scene where he just accidentally knocks on her door. Like, I guess I could see that happening in a dorm room, but the fact that she's watching a show that he's interested in watching, and then he's just like, oh, hey, I might as well just like make this a thing. I showed up at the wrong door, but she's cute. The show's good. She's got gummy bears. Why not? Let's just like dig deeper into this and see how it goes. And then it ended up becoming a really sexy moment. And she thoroughly enjoyed it. He enjoyed it. Obviously, he didn't think that she enjoyed it enough because she didn't come. So he came back for a second round, which she didn't mind. But basically, I'm just like, I was so taken aback already. Like I immediately when that happened, I was like, I like this book. And I think I'm gonna like this couple. Some people have brought up that Grace is essentially a consolation prize because, we knew that Logan had liked Hannah first. I don't think that Grace was a consolation prize. Like I said in the last episode, it's completely normal for a friend, I think, to potentially like their friend's partner. I mean, especially if they kind of met around the same time, which is the case for Garrett, Logan, and Hannah. But it's a matter of what they do about it. And Logan was trying so hard to get over Hannah, not only for his own sake, but for Garrett's sake and for Hannah's sake. And I think that it's only fair that when he first met Grace, he he thought she was cute. He wasn't like, "Oh, I'm trying to use her." That wasn't his intention. It's just the moment just kind of happened between them. And so I understand why he confided in her and I understand how she could feel upset in the moment, but I think calling her a consolation prize would be too far. What do you think? Next is I just love how they have these really cute moments and they treasure it, especially Logan. Their tickle moments and how he was like, he just feels so connected and in love with her when he literally just tickles her. Especially allowing someone else to tickle you can be a really vulnerable, open thing. But the fact that he just loves it so much and cherishes it so much, even more than the sex, I think that's really, really cute. Okay. Especially since we're given the context that they're all basically playboys. So for him to think that the tickling is the big thing for him, it's like, oh, that's really sweet. His attempts to win her back. I think that Grace is a genius for coming up with that list of things that he needed to do in order to win her back. I think that I might start implementing that with my partner if he ever upsets me. And the thing is, okay, let's put this out there. I think she was already ready to forgive him. It was just a matter of him showing that he was going to put in the effort to make it up to her. And all the things that he did end up to me being really, really cute. And especially one of my favorite things was the red shades moment. Okay. When he said that, oh, this thing's so expensive, but I might have gone and bought it anyway. And then lo and behold, he finds it and he has to strip to take a picture. That was so funny and so unexpected. I just love that Grace could even come up with that. And then finally, when he makes this big decree of his love on the radio station, I just love those really big romantic gestures. Only though if the other party already kind of expects it or wants it. I think it could be really, really stress inducing if someone did that out of the blue and you were totally like, who is this person? But the fact that, that was his last step and the radio station means a lot to her. So for her to make him making that big gesture, and especially since at the beginning, like, he was unsure what this relationship was, and then now like he's officially announcing like she's my girl. This is to me the better version of the hands off decree that Garrett did in book 1, because this is like hands off, but like because she's my treasure, not because you can't have her, but because I love her so much. I cherish her that much. And I was like, "Aw." And he could be such a romantic, it seems. Okay, guys, so let's go into a game. Game number 1. This game, basically, we're going to pretend to be Briar FM, and I am your host. And I came up with 2 potential questions that listeners would submit, and then I'm going to try to answer them. Okay, question number 1. My situationship says he doesn't want a relationship, but acts like a boyfriend. What should I do? So, first things first, I think, what are these actions? I'd like to know. And second, is that person doing it for other people? Because if they are, then maybe that's just something that they generally do, or they have other situationships at the same time, which you probably don't want to touch that. But if they aren't doing those things for other people, then maybe you are someone really special to them. And in which case, maybe you got to figure out what's the limiting factor here that as to why they don't want to be in a relationship. Maybe they just want to get to know you more first before they commit to something. Maybe they are getting over someone else and they're trying to figure things out, kind of like with Logan. Also, figure out where you stand. What does a relationship really mean to you? Because maybe they already think that you're in a relationship officially. So I would also figure out, or at least clearly define, what you think a relationship entails. And maybe they just had a very different perception of what relationships mean and therefore they were scared off by it. But maybe you could be on the same page with this person about the definition of the relationship, and then maybe you guys could come to an agreement on being in one. Let me know what you think your tips would be if you're this host answering the question. Okay, second question. I hooked up a guy and now he's acting like nothing happened. Should I text him or should I let him figure it out? Okay. It depends on the context of whether, like, how you guys hooked up. So if you guys were both drunk, maybe he just doesn't remember, and then just need to be like, hey, like, we hooked up, like, what's going on? But if you guys were completely sober, then maybe you need to have an in-person conversation and go, hey, let's talk this through. But you should know what you want out of this conversation. Because what if they turn it around? They're like, well, what do you want from me? Like, what do you want to do about it? And you got to be ready to answer that question. But if they start ghosting you, then I guess you have your answer. I don't know. All right, that one's a little bit more of a toughie, I think. How would you answer this listener question? Okay, let's talk about the other people in this book because there were so many of them. First, Ramona, guys. Whew. I wholeheartedly think Ramona was toxic through and through, even until the end, even after she apologized and admitted that she was feeling insecure about everything. Whew. Okay. There were quite a few yellow/red flags along the way, but the first one I was kind of iffy about as to whether it was a flag until I did more reflection later. So I could see how Grace kind of fell into this with Ramona, especially since they knew each other for such a long time. And so Ramona seemed to be really good at what she did. But the first thing is when Ramona said, baby, you've got to stop revealing all your crazy up front. Seriously, save all that stuff for later when you're in a relationship with a guy and it's harder for him to run away. Okay, so when I first read this, I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of cute. Like basically giving advice to your friend that like maybe you should tone down something that's a little bit extreme about yourself. But then after learning more about Ramona and then rereading this, what I'm seeing is that revealing all the crazy up front is like you're already taking her whatever she thinks and says out loud as crazy, that it's not okay to be said, which why are you her friend if you think that way? Just like how I opened this episode saying that I love Grace. I think it's really endearing and cute that she babbles and says what she means. I feel like Ramona just doesn't really like her, honestly. In which case, like, don't be friends then. You don't have to. I just thought that was kind of a yellow flag. Then later on, when she has a forgive me hug, ugh. That's like one key thing of a love bomber is when they already have something planned that they usually do to make it up to you whenever they've upset you. That's a sign of a love bomber. Next is when basically only the people that Ramona has agreed to or Ramona has introduced to Grace can Grace actually hang out with them. Ooh, that's hyper toxic. Basically controlling your social circle. That's a no-no for sure. And then making Grace feel bad when she doesn't immediately forgive her. Like at one point, she was apologizing, and then Grace wouldn't take it initially. And then she's like, I'm trying to apologize here. Why are you being sarcastic? And it's like, whoa. Who's the one apologizing here? You or me? Like, girl, gotta back off, okay? And then obviously the final straw is when she tried to hook up with Logan. And I'm so glad that Logan forwarded her the text. And I'm glad that they had the talk about it and that Ramona, I guess, apologized, but she had to give a reason for, doing that wrong thing, which is that, oh, I've been so insecure about everything. It almost feels like a sorry, not sorry. Like, I did it, but I have my reasons type of thing. Or like, I did it, but you need to feel bad for me because I'm the real victim here, even though I'm the one that hurt you. Like, whoa there, okay? Oh, God. This girl is like a combination of various people that I've met who are super toxic, all combined in one. It's like, oh my God, like, stay the heck away from this girl. I would not want to meet a Ramona. But yeah, so I'm glad that Grace ended up basically forgiving her, but then also being like, well, that doesn't mean that we're going to be friends, or if we are going to be friends, it's going to take time. And that's a sign to me of Grace's growth, that she had a huge arc from the beginning where she felt she was definitely confident enough in herself that she didn't need to get external validation, but she still was putting up with Ramona's behavior. So by the end of the book, though, is when she finally realizes that, she could have really strong boundaries with people and that she doesn't have to forgive someone just because they apologize or just because they said they had their reasons. And I love, love, love that for Grace. Okay, let's dive into the graceless liar situation. Again, because of Ramona. This is something that I learned from a TikToker. He makes a lot of relationship videos. And in one video, he says, you can kind of tell if your friend is bad talking you in front of your other friends based on how they treat you or the demeanor that they have in front of you. And that got me really thinking, especially in this situation, because if Ramona thinks that Grace was exaggerating or lying, then that's going to reflect on when she does tell her friends about the situation. But first of all, she shouldn't have even said anything because Grace wanted to keep it between them. But second of all, when she said it, obviously she expressed the doubt that she had in Grace, which therefore made other people express doubt in Grace too. So I was just like, oh, that was such a toxic relationship. And then on top of that, it's like, I've been bullied before, but never to this extent. And the fact that this whole campus is starting to use this hashtag just for what? The fact that she quote unquote exaggerated or lied about sleeping with Logan, it's like, who cares? Like, get a life, Jesus. So now let's move on to Grace's mom. It's a smaller detail, but I think it's really important, and it does I think it does play into her being accepting of Ramona's toxic behaviors, because I do think her mom was at least a little bit toxic, or at least too self-centered, because that conversation of asking Grace when she was a kid, like, oh, would you want your mom to be happy? And that's the context of her leaving her dad and then going to Paris. It's like, that's not really a fair question to ask of your kid. If you're going to decide to move on, that's one thing, and you make your decision and you be fully responsible for it yourself. Do not put that responsibility or quote unquote choice on your child. That's just not right. So let's talk about Grace's dad, because I think he was a solid father figure. And in this book, and surprisingly enough, we don't even get that much of him being a father figure to Grace, but more so a father figure to Logan. And that's so sweet and important, because Logan obviously didn't, and we're going to get into Logan's dad, but Logan didn't have a good father figure growing up. And so now, through his now girlfriend, he has a good father figure in his life. I just love when Logan showed up to the dinner late and then confided in Grace's dad. And then Grace's dad embraced him and then followed up with Grace being like, hey, I think, Logan is going through a tough time right now. You might want to talk to him. I just love the way that that was handled. And I'm glad that Logan felt comfortable enough to even show up late. And I think any reasonable person, having gone through what Logan did with his dad that day, would be like, I think I need to pass on this dinner. I'm sorry. I'll make it up to you. I'll explain later. But he actually showed up. Regardless of showing up late, he still showed up and he owned up to it and he talked to her dad. Good for him. That made me respect Logan quite a bit, that gesture. Okay, and then we have Logan's dad. So I understand that alcoholism is a really deep topic too. It's really touchy. I would say it's not easy to deal with alcoholism, but at the same time, I feel like he could have been a better father regardless. The moments when he was taking it out on Logan, whatever he was going through or feeling, and I think that's when he really, really crossed the line. Kudos to Logan and his brother for being so patient with their dad. I think that the pact that him and his brother made was a bit too much. I understand that his brother has a stable relationship and eventually wants to take over the business, but he just needed a break. But why does that mean that Logan has to fully give up his hockey career in order to give his brother the break? Why couldn't they just hire someone for that break? I understand the two brothers are trying to do what they think is right because they didn't have a father figure to actually tell them what they really should or could have done. All that aside, I'm also really glad that the coach came and talked with Logan's dad. Because, yes, I feel like technically maybe the coach crossed some lines in going to the dad directly. But at the same time, in real life, coaches, I think, play a huge role outside of just the sport itself. They are really mentors and supporters for these kids because there's not too much family support in schools these days. So the coach carries that extra burden oftentimes. And I think that it was important because the coach saw that Logan was literally throwing away his future for what? And I'm glad that he showed up and talked with Logan's dad and agreed to go to rehab and clean himself up. We don't get to find out whether that worked out in this book, but all in all, I think that it was still a really good step forward. And the fact that he had a somewhat sober conversation with Logan to be like, hey, like, don't give up your hockey career. Go for it. That was really important for Logan to be able to hear that because Logan was always hanging onto this thread of like, when the good times were good, he was a good father. And that's you almost always the case with children who have really difficult parents is they always hang on to those very particular good moments and think like if only the parent could be like that more often or if the only the parent could change and go back to the way things were. Okay, let's talk about one thing that I didn't love so much and then one thing that one of our followers Alka brought up as something that she didn't like so much that after I listened to it I was like, actually I could kind of see that. Okay, so the first thing is I didn't like the handling of Logan's infatuation with Hannah. The way that it was justified off as, oh, Logan just wanted or was envious of Garrett and Hannah's relationship and he didn't actually like Hannah. I don't know. That's not my takeaway. I felt like Logan had already liked Hannah even before Garrett and Hannah were officially a thing. And so to me, it just felt like a cop out a little bit in order to just help Logan move on to Grace or have a reason why his and Grace's relationship would work. But in reality, like people have infatuations and then get over them all the time. Like you don't have to have this grand excuse of like he was just envious of their relationship. But I don't know. That's my thought. What do you think? And then Alka was like, the way the guys talk to each other about banging girls is like as since most of us obviously are female readers, do we appreciate hearing about guys talking about the way that they bang girls? So at first, I just kind of took it for granted that all of the guys are talking really coarsely, I guess, about having sex with women. But I was just so focused on like the romance side or all of the other drama with the friends and family. But when Alka brought that up, I was like, actually, I could kind of see how that could be a turnoff. Like how I said in the previous episode, that romance books can be a bit like a fantasy, sort of an exaggeration, if you will. And maybe in that way, it went to the exaggeration of the opposite end, where she made the guys a little bit too rough and tough. If you will, because it could be somewhat of a fantasy in these books, maybe we could soften it a little bit or not include so much of that rough banter and just focus more on the romance. I don't know. What do you think? Okay, now let's go into game number 2. What would Garrett have done? Because there's some really wild scenarios that happen in this book, and Logan is the one that's handling them. What do you think Garrett would have done in those situations? So let's talk about situation number 1 when Logan showed up at Grace's door accidentally. What would Garrett have done? Maybe in that situation, if it were, let's say, Hannah who answered the door, Garrett might have done the same thing, kind of been like, let's watch together and then let's eat gummy bears and then maybe something goes somewhere. So, what do you think? Okay, second scenario, when Logan showed up late for the dinner with Grace's dad. Do you think Garrett would have confided in Grace's dad like Logan did? I think that Garrett might have actually done what I said would be a reasonable person might do after having that whole situation with their dad is apologize and be like, I can't make it. I can't do this dinner anymore. Something came up. I think that's what Garrett would do. What do you think? Okay, so let's talk about my favorite moments and quotes. Okay, I have quite a few. When Logan goes, go away, G, I'm wooing. I love that. Next, haters be hating, bitches be bitching. When he shows up to the dining hall to shut down the graceless liar situation, and he kisses her, he takes her tray for her. I just love it. Like, I think Logan is all about these grand gestures, and he nailed them. Like, that immediately shut up everyone, as it should. And I think it really warmed her up. Like, oh, that would be really sweet if someone did that for me. I love that, especially since at that time they weren't officially a thing yet. And so he still was willing to do that for her. Like, okay, Logan, all right, I see you. Um, when she's like, I love you, you stupid jackass. Ah! I cannot imagine the Grace at the beginning of the book saying that, but by the time she said that, she was sophomore Grace. She wasn't freshman Grace anymore. She had a lot more confidence and self-esteem, and I love that for her, and that quote was a reflection of that. The water tower scene, the fact that she's afraid of heights and yet she still went up there with him because he made her feel comfortable enough to do that. It was another show of their relationship going to another level and that increased trust between the two. And then them confiding in each other, like being more vulnerable and open. I love that. Okay, so let's talk about the comparison to the show. So I actually liked the show even more than the series. Yes, I did. But granted, we didn't get all of the characters yet in the show, and we also didn't get most of the storylines of those characters that have been introduced so far. It's mostly been Garrett and Hannah, and then the starting pieces of Allie and Dean's romance. First thing that I want to point out was something that Alka submitted, where she's like, there actually is so much less of a focus on the sex in the show than in the books. Like in the books, they're just constantly talking about sex. Like, especially when the guys are having a good time, like in their relationship. Like Garrett was just like, I have a girlfriend now, and I can have sex whenever I want, and then I can Netflix and chill with her kind of thing. And then similar things with Logan and Grace too, is they're always having sex. But in the show, like, yes, Allie and Dean, start off basically being a friends with benefits, and therefore there's a lot of sex involved. But with Garrett and Hannah, there actually wasn't too much of that. So that's a good point, Alka. The next point I want to bring up is Logan and Garrett really got into it in the show. Like, I know there was a little bit of a rift in the book when it was clear that Logan liked Hannah, but it was never like as big as they made it in the show. But aside from the Logan Hannah situation, was the fights around how they handled the hockey team. Like, oh yeah, that's another thing. There's so much more hockey, I think, in the show than in the books. And then probably because hockey is such a visual, exciting thing to watch versus read about, especially if you don't know anything about hockey. When they have all of these like technical descriptions of the hockey in the book, I'm just like, it flies right over my head, guys. I'm not a sports person by any means. But when I watch it on the show, I'm like, oh, wow, I get so excited. So I could see why they have that difference. But the huge rift between Logan and Garrett because of the hockey stuff was like, wow, I was taken aback. Although I guess hockey was kind of the means. The real reason why they had the rift was because Garrett wasn't willing to open up to Logan about how his dad abused him, and therefore he was bothered by seeing him at the game, and therefore he wasn't doing as well in the game. So I could see why Logan was frustrated in the show. I also like the kind of the arc that they had where when Garrett was taken off the team, that Logan, he made sure that Logan got the credit he deserved for stepping up to be essentially the interim captain. I think that was a really good bonding moment for them. I think there was a lot more emphasis on friendship in the show so far than in the books, because I guess each book is kind of relative to the romantic relationships rather than the friendships. So the friendships are like inserted here and there into the series, whereas the romance is the key point. I get that, but I do like the adaptation a lot more. I do. So the final thing is I didn't like how the show changes Logan's brother to a sister. And I actually do not like Jules. Like, I could kind of be more accepting of Jules later on, but they are to me at first, they were really annoying, really pretentious, almost like you owe me like an explanation kind of feeling. And I didn't appreciate that. But then later on in the series, you see that Jules has a very close, but then also tense because of their mother relationship with Logan. It's kind of complicated. I think Jules is more so a way to connect the characters and to have more communication between them when they're not actually trying to communicate with each other through the school campus app that they run. But at the same time, it just feels a little bit too forced, like too convenient too, that Jules is just always there. Yes, Jules is Logan's sibling, so covering the hockey stuff, sure, but I don't know. It just feels I'm not quite feeling the Jules character and the placement of the character as well. Let me know what you think. All right, guys. Overall, though, I love the book. I love Grace and Logan. I cannot wait to get into the next book in the series. I've already read it and I love Allie and Dean. Let's go. Let's get some more smutty moments, hot and heavy. And also, let's learn more about Dean because we get to learn about Dean in these first two books, but just only scratching the surface. All right, so I'm excited. I hope you're excited to continue the off campus series by Elle Kennedy. And I'll see all of you in the next episode. Bye, besties.